In Ife, there stood an ancient well, deep and sacred, named for the goddess Óshun. It nourished the people with waters that never waned. The Obalufe, a chief of the city and her descendant, watched as greed replaced gratitude. The covenant with Óshun weakened. The once fertile lands turned barren. The well's murmur grew faint. The coming of Óshun festival haunted the Obalufe. To the river's heart he commanded, recover our pact with Óshun, the great mother. The journey was harsh, sun beating and earth rebelling. Kin from Ife faced both the elements and greedy neighbors spying on their sacred mission. Among them, one dark-eyed brother nursed envy in silent broods. At the river's origin, they clashed over envy's spark. The traitor's blood dripped into the source, an unintended offering to Óshun. In remorse, his kin grasped what unity had cost. They returned to Ife, souls heavy, dispensing Óshun's water into the well. At the festival, confessions blended with prayers. Óshun's spirit surged through them, a vessel made flesh, demanding respect, promising renewal. Her well answered with abundance. In their rites and daily breaths, reverence bound them once more. Óshun's waters flowed, teaching that what sustains also judges. The divine vessel within and without held life's fragile dance. Recap. In the last chapter, we walked through a door. On one side, the enduring elements of African femininity stood tall and unshaken. On the other, a transformative force whispered of change, speaking through goddesses who commanded both earth and ocean. They were united in their capacity for renewal and in their stories. We found our own, a narrative that balances on the thin line between the elemental and the transformative. Today, we turn our eyes to a symbol as simple as it is sacred, the vessel. We see it in the curve of a storyteller's calabash, the belly of a drum, the arc of the horizon cradling the sky. Within African mythology, the vessel is not merely an object. It represents something more, the bearer of life, the cup of wisdom, the circle of the earth. In Chapter 3, The Sacred Vessel, embodying femininity in African mythology, we consider the female form in its holiest state. In Africa, the body is a divine container. We learn this from Nut, who stretches across the heavens, stars nestling in her arms, and from Atete, whose very breath promises harvests that brings forth life. We will visit places of power where women, as doorways, give passage to new life, becoming conduits between worlds. We stand by rivers that are both path and provider, like Óshun, celebrating life's cycle of giving and receiving. So let us begin our journey with the vessel in hand, tracing stories etched into pottery, shards and sung over lifetimes. Let us watch as water shapes the land and as women shape history. For in understanding these vessels, we tap into currents running deeper than rivers, currents that flow into the very essence of existence. Introduction. The vessel as metaphor for femininity. What could a simple container reveal about the intricacies of femininity as understood in African cultural consciousness? The metaphor of the vessel beautifully weaves its way through the heart of African spirituality, representing much more than a physical receptacle. This emblematic figure captures the nurturing essence, the life-giving power, and the profound mystery of the feminine. As an archetypal image, the vessel encompasses both physicality and spirituality, marrying the visible and invisible realms in an enduring symbol that reflects the profound respect and acknowledgement of women's roles within these rich and varied traditions. One, the body as divine container. In the mirrored stories that thrum through the heartbeat of Africa, the female body is consecrated as a divine vessel, revered for its life-sustaining abilities. Contemplating its form, one of curves and enclosures, evokes creation myths in which the world itself is depicted as emerging from generous, sacred wombs. Take, for instance, the Egyptian goddess Nut, whose very being personifies the cosmos. She swathes the stars within her celestial form, poetically encapsulating the idea of the body as a vessel. In Ethiopia, the fertility goddess Atete is similarly venerated, symbolizing the wellspring of life and nurturing that flows from within her essence. This reverence extends into communal expressions of joy and reverence, the epiphany of birth, the transitions marked by coming-of-age ceremonies, the deep respect for motherhood, and the solemnity of death are all reflected in the rituals that honor female deities like Osset. These observances are not merely ceremonies but widespread acknowledgements of life's sacred doorways, each transition echoing the rhythmic opening and closing of the sacred vessel. These narratives and practices illustrate a panorama in which the female form, through biological and spiritual metaphor, is perpetually celebrated as a threshold between the worlds, a fundamental aspect that gives rise to continuity and transformation alike within African cultural mythology. Two, sacred orifices, the points of transition. When we turn our gaze to the African understanding of femininity, we find that the body's sacred orifices play a crucial role as conduits of life force and spiritual exchange. These are the revered points of transition where the internal becomes external and the external is invited inward, marking passages of essence and material across the boundary of the sacred vessel. The female body in its divine architecture is viewed as a landscape of creative osmosis. These orifices are not just physical gateways but spiritual alleys through which blessings flow and wisdom is dispensed. They are celebrated as fulcrums of giving and receiving, a cycle intrinsic to the rhythm of life itself. Take, for example, the adoration of Óshun, the Yoruba deity of rivers and sweet waters. Her worshippers engage with her through the offering and receipt of prayers and sacrifices, recalling the dynamism of the vessel's exchange. Óshun's devotees, in their testimonials of faith, not only give unto her but also receive, thus perpetuating the cycle of spiritual generosity that keeps the waters and, by extension, fertility and prosperity flowing. This sacred dialogue between deity and devotee echoes the fundamental interplay at the heart of all living interchange. The breath that we release comes back to us as nourishing air, and the offerings we make to the world return in kind through unseen connections. Herein lies the profound African insight that these points of transition are not mere anatomical structures, but hallowed portals which life itself is cyclically renewed and sustained. The encapsulation of dualities within the vessel. The feminine vessel in African spirituality transcends the reductive and pays homage to subtleties and complexities of existence. It is an emblem that harbors both capacity to nurture and the inevitability of letting go, a sovereign balance that resonates with the broader rhythms of life and death. One encounters this fine equilibrium in the portrayal of Earth's mothers, such as the goddess Allah of the Igbo people, who exemplify the duality of life-giving and life-reclaiming forces. As a life-giver, she is the root from which being sprouts, bearing witness to the manifold expressions of creation. As a reclaimer, she embodies the ultimate return, gently summoning souls back into her embrace at the cycle's close. This dual function reminds us of the reciprocal relationship between birth and dissolution. Just as new life is ushered forth from the vessel in a surge of creative potential, so too must it ultimately return, providing nourishment for the next generation's emergence. The human experience within African mythology is encapsulated within this matriarchal vessel, an image of protection, transformation, and inexorable return. The waters of femininity, fluidity, and creativity. Water, universally revered for its life-giving properties, is also a recurring metaphor for femininity within the landscape of African spiritual expression. As with the vessel, water represents unparalleled flexibility and adaptability, qualities that are intimately associated with feminine creative power in the myths and legends that crisscross the continent. As water seamlessly transitions from rain to river to ocean, it mirrors the fluidity inherent in the feminine archetype. A crystal clear example of this is seen in the deity Mami Wata, whose essence contains the transformative powers of water. Tales of Mami Wata celebrate journeys from the murkiness of profound depths to the clarity of enlightened surfaces, serving allegorically as pathways from a lesser-known state of being into one's deep awareness and understanding. This fluidity is not just about adapting and changing, it is the very pulse of creativity and the endless cycle of transformation that defines existence. It evokes the sense of potential that flows from the dark unknown to manifest into the light of consciousness, perpetually renewing and reshaping itself as bodies of water reshape the landscapes they traverse. The continued homage to these water deities underscores an essential attribute of the feminine in African spirituality, the fertility that nurtures growth, evolution, and the perennial dance of change. Five, integration of body and cosmos, the vessel expanded. The symbolism of the vessel radiates beyond the contours of a woman's body, stretching into cosmic dimensions where it assumes a role that aligns individual experiences with universal truths. This expanded vessel unifies the microcosm of personal existence with the macrocosm of the universe, celebrating a continuity between the terrestrial and the celestial. The interweaving of the body with the cosmos is epitomized by deities such as Atete, Orifices, who not only stand as a protective matron for earthly beings but also as a bridge to the vast heavens. Her story and symbolic significance are akin to architectural marvels like the pyramids, which soar skyward, converging earth and divine space in an apex that continues to owe humanity. This intertwined imagery of vessels and celestial bodies emphasizes the conviction that human life is a reflection of greater cosmic processes. Mythological embodiments allow mortals to approach, comprehend, and engage with vast cosmological forces, seeing themselves as part of a grand, interconnected web that spans from within the human heart to the furthest star. Through this holistic integration, African spiritual traditions convey that the voyage of understanding and consciousness navigates both internal depths and the expanse of the skies. Conclusion: the mythic vessel's legacy in African spirituality. The narrative of the mythic vessel in African spirituality forms a profound interpretive lens for human existence. It captures not only our genesis within the maternal womb, but also our continuous unfolding within the maternal cosmos. Each new generation's conscious experience is infused within the wisdom of ancestors and is brimming with boundless possibilities, as suggested by the vessel's enduring presence. This matrilineal vessel carries an eternal narrative, shaped by the belief systems and practices that sustain it, and this narrative resonates powerfully even in modern spiritual landscapes. Today, as in millennia past, the archetype of the sacred feminine vessel informs our intrinsic drive toward growth amid chaos, our yearnings for balance, and our aspirations to transcend from shadow to illumination. The legacy of the feminine in African spirituality, characterized by this vessel, is indeed ever present. It continues to guide us, wrapping its metaphorical arms around our collective striving for enlightenment, and this, in essence, embodies the eternal maternal, a consciousness that nurtures, transforms, and perpetually guides the human spirit towards a deeper understanding of life's grand tapestry. Within this sacred cycle, the mythic vessel speaks to us across time. It reassures us that while we navigate beyond the life-giving sanctum of our origins, we never truly leave the sanctity of the universal womb, the source from which we all emerge and to which we are destined to return. Remarks. As we now close the chapter on the sacral vessel, embodying femininity in African mythology, where vessels were more than mere containers, but symbols of nurturing, transition, and the feminine mystery, we prepare to embark on a further revelation of the Great Mother's influence in African spirituality. In our next journey, Chapter 4, The Luminous Legacy, we venture into the transformative force housed within the maternal, the power beyond not only the creation of life but its spiritual elevation. We see maternity in Africa as a profound alchemy, where flesh is not the end but a simple state to be transcended. Across the continent, maternal figures shepherd this deep transformation, like guardians standing firm at the gates between what we see and what we understand. Great deities of earth and celestial mothers guide this pilgrimage. The story of beings that exist within and beyond links in an ever-continuing chain of material and spiritual existence. Romantic tales from ancient times grow and intermingle with the epochs and the soils of Africa. With a reverence for both fierce and tender, these stories impart lessons molding men of spirit and substance, sons born of skyward ascensions and tellers of epic sagas. So we press on, ready to hold aloft the lantern through yet another chapter. Join me as we continue to decipher the narratives sketched upon the vast canvas of Africa's night sky, where maternal spirits illuminate the universal dance from darkness to light, embodying the essence that whispers in our blood and stirs the very core of our beings. Thank you for joining me. Join me again in the next chapter. This is the House of Horrors. Signing out.